Good afternoon, bookworms and flyleaves. Welcome back to this week's episode of Author Reads here on Fae Productions. I'm your host, Fairy Princess Lolly, and today I'm here with our guest author, John Drake, again. And before we jump into the show, of course, please hit like and subscribe. Today it's chiseling the bell, because if you saw our thumbnail, you saw that there was cavemen involved in that, and I thought chiseling rock was funny. So chisel our bell. That's what we're doing. If you'd like to get future notifications of shows. And then also a shout out to today's show sponsor, who is a Fairy Blossom Festival vendor, as well as having been here on the show before, Down the Road Clayworks, owned and operated by Chase Cranor. And Down the Road Clayworks started as a small pottery demonstration booth for the Renaissance fairs and many Celtic festivals and Highland games that are held across Oregon. They use a human-powered, kick-operated potter's wheel. That's quite a little tongue twister there. And Chase demonstrates on site the art and craft of throwing pottery without electricity. It is a great way for people to see an ancient craft that is still in practice today. And you can find their link information below there in the ticker, as well as in the low bar. Please check them out. And if you are attending Fairy Blossom, then you will find them in our virtual fairy market as well. So we're looking forward to that. All orders over $35 do get free shipping. So with all of that said, then we can jump into the show with John here, who is with us again, was here a few weeks ago, but there were technical difficulties that now have been surmounted. So John, please, though, because of said technical difficulties, we shall proceed as if perhaps this is round one.
Yeah,
so please,
exactly. I can say the same jokes again, can I? And
yes, you can.
Yeah, nobody will laugh again.
So, yes, please, if you will, introduce yourself to everybody and tell us who you are and what you write about.
Okay, well, I'm John Drake. I am in Dublin, in Ireland. Hence it's 10 o'clock at night here, so hence the drink. I'm not just drinking in the afternoon. Not that that's a bad thing, but I write
5 o'clock somewhere.
Exactly, yeah. I write comedy, obviously. So I do. I suppose I'm not really genre specific apart from the comedy. So I like to kind of scatter the topics that I choose, which will become apparent when I run through the 4 books that I have here. And I suppose in terms of my comedy, I'm inspired by Douglas Adams and Terry Pratchett and Monty Python and Blackadder, which I hear isn't as famous in the States actually as it is over here. So, but Blackadder is Rowan Atkinson of Mr. Bean fame, and Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie and all those kind of people. So that's the style of comedy that I'm inspired by. I was going to say that's the type of comedy I write, but that's for others to judge. But that's what inspired me anyway. And I've written 4 novels so far. I didn't start writing until I was 40. So I know I only look 21 now.
I was just going to say, man, did they card you for that Guinness there? Because
I think I did that joke last time as well. Anyway, so I started when I was 40. I'm 43 now, and I have 4 books done. So, and I hadn't written a word. When I say I started writing, I mean like I didn't do anything at all. Not even as a child doing cute little stories or anything. I did nothing at all until I was 40. And I wrote what turned out to be my first line turned out to be the start of this book here, which is Making Man. So this is the it's funny you picked Chisel actually, because a lot of the characters are named after they're called like granite and cobble and all these kind of stone related things. And but I didn't pick Chisel. Maybe I should have called him Chisel. But anyway, and how that came about was I was just trying to do something that no one had, to my knowledge, had really done before, or at least hadn't been done to death. So I didn't want to do like a vampire romance or something that's child wizards or anything like that. So I thought I'll try and do something just totally different, which turns out to be a disastrous thing to do from a marketing point of view. But anyway, so I picked a caveman comedy and just started with that one. Anyways, that's Making Man. And that's available in all good Amazon stores. But that's hopefully going to be all of these are hopefully going to be in bookshops later this year, which would be great to have the physical copy in there. And then when I'd finished that one, then I decided I was never going to write a Neanderthal. Sorry, it's a story about a Neanderthal engineer. I should probably say what it's about. So it's an inventor who's a caveman, and the tribe he's with don't appreciate his inventions, and he goes off on an adventure, basically trying to find more like-minded people. So there's a bit of hobbitiness about it as well.
Why would we do that wheel thing when we can continue to push this square?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and his tribe said, "Oh, fire won't last the summer," and all this kind of stuff, you know. So, so it's all that kind of stuff. So it's fun though. It's a comedy, but with a a really good story running through it, a really good kind of plot. And like some of the books that I've done are more plot driven than others. That one's quite a good story. And then what it turns out that was my first one. So in writing that, I realized it's actually quite. There were very few points of reference to make jokes about, because they had like mountains and trees and lakes and that's pretty much it, really. So it was quite hard to do all these analogies and things like that. So the next one, anyway, I decided to choose something I just had a general passing interest in, which is the Black Death. And I thought, well, that's a good challenge to do as a comedy, because it wasn't a very funny time, you know. So that's where cheating death came up, which is funnier than the cover makes it seem, but it is actually a comedy. I think the new version now says a John Drake satire, just so people know it is actually a comedy. So I'll be reading from this one shortly, actually. So this one is. There's kind of 4 different sets of characters that converge on Avignon, which was the papal seat in when the Black Death was doing the rounds, and there are characters who, one starts a pilgrimage to Avignon from England, and he's a devout Christian, and he's at the start, and he's definitely not at the end, and he meets up with another pilgrim who is a serial pilgrim, and he just loves getting the break from the wife and kids back home, so he's always saying things in mass to get kicked off onto a pilgrimage because he loves going away for 3 months drinking. So as he meets up and they do all this, and then there's somebody coming from.
How is a person a serial pilgrimager?
Well, because he likes to just he doesn't get on with his wife and kids, so he just wants to be sent off for months so he can get a break from the kids. So he just does things to get himself booted to Avignon to go and get within sight of the Pope to repent his sins or whatever. So and then there's a German or Germanic woman character who's called Hildegund, who is trying to assassinate the Pope for reasons I won't go into now, but that's the kind of the main thrust of the plot. And then there's a con man from Sicily who's coming up, and he gets inadvertently caught up in espionage from the Doge of Genoa and gets sent to Avignon for another reason, and they all kind of meet up and stuff happens. I won't. Yeah, but anyway. But the scene I'm going to read from this is the Pope is also one of the characters in this, and he's never been shopping before, and he hasn't been out of the Palais de Pape, which is the papal palace, for 5 years without an armed guard or whatever. So
right.
He goes shopping, so that tells you how not serious this book is. So I'll read that scene from that, and then I went on to Killing Chance, which is Genghis Khan, or to aficionados, Chenghis Khan. I should really try get used to saying that. It's Chenghis Khan, and this is a full-on parody. Really, this is just silly from start to finish. So it's. Again, a bit of a juxtaposition to put the comedy into Genghis Khan, because he's not a very famously funny person either, and he famously has DNA in
like everybody ever, because he had 3 million wives and
exactly
9 billion children.
yeah, exactly. So of course the first thing I did was to make it that he didn't have an heir to the throne because he didn't have any kids. So I just flipped that on its head a bit, and then decided that it would be funny if he had a HR manager. Because the Mongol horde was so big, so it's a story of
and brutal. They weren't exactly nice to their enemies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So his HR manager and his heir end up the wrong side of the city walls of an ancient Jin, so ancient Chinese city, and basically the story is Genghis trying to find his heir and identify, but you don't know who the heir is until the end of the book. So but this one's just really silly in terms of like the names. So the ruler of the Chinese city is called Ruling, and the so it's just like, it's not very highbrow, you know. It's just fun. And then the cook is called Captain Meringue and things like that. But my favorite one is the captain of the ballistics regiment in the Mongol horde is called Captain Wee, but it's Wee with 5 E's, so it's like Captain Wee.
Whee!
So it's like it's not going to be used in Oxbridge for reference material for, you know, the history of the Mongol horde, but it's great fun to write anyway, nonetheless. And then my last book, which is out this week, is my first foray into science fiction, because my publisher Three Ravens like thought, well, look at it, you know, this guy's. You know, I'd never say that I'm up there with Douglas Adams or anything, but that's the style that I write in, and Terry Pratchett and that kind of thing. And they were begging me to do a science fiction, and I'd obviously never done one. They'd all been historical, just almost by chance, really. They'd all been historical. So I decided to give it a go anyway. And the outcome of that was Zoomers, which is out this week. So,
well, congratulations on that. Your book coming out, so that's exciting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's really exciting. I still don't have a copy. I want to get a copy in my hand, but I don't have one yet. But I've seen it out there in the wild. People have been taking photos with it and stuff. So it does exist. I did really write it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's about, just briefly, that's about it's a time travel science fiction comedy, and all life in the universe is ending, as it often is in these kind of stories. And again, I'm going to read the opening to Zoomers shortly. So. But they actually, maybe I'll leave it at that, actually, because I'm going to, otherwise I'll give it away. But it's about aliens trying to use Earthmen to save the universe, basically.
And so, might I ask, as long as it's not a spoiler or something, but where does the name Zoomers derive?
Oh, well, I named it before COVID, and I started writing it before COVID, which is really frustrating, because obviously now it sounds like it's a book about people doing video calls, you know.
Yeah.
but it really isn't. It's zooming is their time travel, and you know, they can travel to any time and place in the universe. That's when they zoom someone. That's what they're doing.
Gotcha.
They're moving them. They're not having a video call. But it was I was too attached to it by the time it came to release, and I thought, I can't change it now.
Can't go back.
No, that's it. So I'm stuck with it. So it's it's not about video calls.
Well, and now I'm curious, for somebody who has only started writing late in life, from zero to books.
Yeah.
How did that come to be?
Well, how did I start in the first place?
Yes, what was it? Something you all like? What inspired that?
Oh, it was kind of two things, really. One was I mean, like everyone always says, a lot of people, like us, I suppose, always say, oh, yeah, I have a book in me, but I just never get around to it. So there was a little bit of that kind of thinking, oh, maybe I could, maybe I couldn't. And also it was just people who, actually, the funny thing is, I actually write it in the start of this. I did a foreword for this, which explains this better than I will now. But basically, people were like in work would ask me to reword their complaints letters and things like that, and so I just I learned that I was good at forming a sentence, which sounds very oversimplified to then go on and write a whole damn book, but so I had that kind of latent ability to string a few sentences together, I suppose, and then I thought, well, and the reason I picked comedy was that I thought, well, I don't want to write stuff that isn't funny, because I want to be entertained while I'm writing it, because I don't do outlines, and I don't plot out the whole book. I don't do any of that. I just lay the tracks as I go. So like when I started making Man, I started with lines that are still in the book, like they made the final cut, but I had no idea what the story was about. I just knew it was a Neanderthal engineer, and then there was a full stop, and that was all I knew. And I just carried on tapping away, and suddenly the story comes up, because then I think you get surprised in this. You think, oh, what would be a good surprise here? Oh, that would be a surprise. And so you just get drawn along as if you're a reader rather than a writer. Sorry, I'm going off the question a little bit, but it was just, I mean, it wasn't that I turned 40 and thought, oh God, midlife crisis, I better get a legacy quickly. It wasn't any of that.
But legacy.
Quick, I need a legacy. I don't know. It just, I suppose the opportunity arose to be able to put some time aside each day to to chip a few words. And actually, I think once I'd started it, I mean, everyone says the first line is the hardest, and that's true. Just to get started is the biggest hurdle. But after that, I found I was enjoying it. So I just kept doing it, really for myself as much as anything. And then before I knew it, I'd written the end, and I was like, oh, geez, there's a book. Now what do I do? So then I self-published, and then ended up getting picked up by 3 Ravens in the end.
Well,
so it
someday
mustn't have
when
been
you're the
total
new
rubbish.
Douglas Adams, I expect to have signed copies of all your books.
Absolutely, yes. As soon as I make my first million,
yes,
I'll send you 2 copies.
Woohoo! Okay, so with that said, now the first book you're going to be reading to us from 2 books today. The first one is going to be
Cheating Death,
and the second one is going to be
Zoomers.
Okay, and so for everybody watching at home, here's what is about to happen. I will turn the screen over to John for his readings, and while he is reading, I will be on mute. I will be in the audience chat with you guys, taking questions for us to pose to him when he is done reading, and when he's done, he'll take the questions, and then we will do a drawing for the free giveaway. I guess that's sort of redundant, for the giveaway of a book. So so that will happen there at the end. And I think with that said, are you ready to read?
I am. Yeah, I'm gonna. You can tell I'm not 21 now. I'm about to put my glasses on to read. So yes.
Me?
Was that you then? Was it?
That was me. Yes.
Thank God for that.
Yes, no, that was me.
This can't happen again.
Yeah, my little web. It happens every now and again, alas. So, okay, well, then I will turn the screen over to you, and you are good to go. Green light, sir.
Okay, so this scene is as I said earlier, the Pope is going shopping during the Black Death. So a fairly well-trodden path in literary circles, I'm sure you'll agree. So God's representative on Earth stepped out from the lobby and into the cool air outside his palace. He didn't notice the 2 guards at the doorway, so still were they remaining, and so ubiquitous had they become to his existence. He walked the long path out to the boundary of the palace grounds and stepped unaccompanied into the wider landscape for the first time in 5 years. He had no idea in which direction the city lay, and a blend of exhilaration and trepidation swelled around his stomach as he tried to choose a course in which to travel. It was precisely this kind of knowledge that was the peril of the ruling class, deemed too trivial a detail for men of power, yet vital if the entourage was to make it to that party with the free cake before sunset. He set out in an arbitrary direction to an undetermined destination, taking in the scenery that passed at the speed he deemed most enjoyable. He stopped at a small bridge and leaned over the edge to see the running water below, taking an unexpected pleasure from the simple scene. A wave of nostalgia sloshed over him, of days gone by when the weight of the world did not rest on his shoulders, of endless weeks when he could do as he pleased, within reason, and walk the streets unrecognized. He stopped again a few paces along the road, this time to look at 2 squirrels that seemed to be having some kind of fight. He marveled at their ferocity, when to anyone passing by it would seem a futile effort to be staking a claim to such a small patch of woodland at the side of the road. When he realized they weren't fighting at all, and were in fact doing quite the opposite, he turned away quickly and carried on along the hard mud road towards the city. It had taken him about half an hour, but he was now within smelling distance of the merchant quarter. He wandered up and down the streets and marveled at how such things had moved on since his pseudo-captivity. He marveled all the more at how they had, against all historical evidence, moved backwards rather than forwards. There seemed to be fewer merchants than he remembered, not more, and the range of goods on sale was much narrower than before, almost linear. Those houses selling food seemed to be exclusively offering bread and grain. Those selling goods seemed to be almost entirely stocked with religious artifacts, a sight that should have filled him with pride and stroked his ego. But they were too saturated in their frequency to be a result of his leadership alone. Something else was happening here, and he wasn't sure he was going to like what it was when he found out. He stepped up to a crooked doorway with myriad religious items on display, coughing to get the attention of the dozing shopkeeper. Huh? Quite so. Now, tell me, young man, what would you like to sell to me today? Said Pope Clement VI, Master of Avignon and would-be winner of the inaugural Naive Shopper of the Decade award. The shopkeeper was a little taken aback. It sounded like a trick question, So he answered honestly. It was the only way he could respond with such an educated accent jangling a metaphorical purse in front of him. All of it. All of it? Yes, all of it. That's what I'd like to sell to you today. Well, yes, said the Pope, unsure of where to take the conversation from here. So, how much would that be then? How much? Bloody hell, said the shopkeeper, staggering a little. I mean, right, yeah, these crosses here are... He paused in his calculations as he began to run out of fingers. Hang on, give me a minute. Joan, I need your fingers, now. A plump woman of indeterminable age sine-curved her way to the front of the house with her fingers outstretched. Here, and hurry up, Leonard. I've got a pot on. The shopkeeper took Joan's hands and tapped each of the fingers, glancing periodically at the crosses on the floor. Mathematics was never his strong point, and so he soon gave up, chose a number he thought was tantamount to robbery, and added a bit on top, then a little more. 100 forints, and I'll throw in these rosary beads for nothing. Can't say fairer than that now, can you? Clement VI was ignorant of both the fairness of the offer and the value of a forint, and so agreed. He turned to his right to nod at his guard to pay the man. Ah, said the Pope. Too much, said the shopkeeper, happy to haggle at these lofty levels. I'll tell you what, you can have 2 rosary beads, this pocket-sized statue of St. Francis, complete with smiling dog, and my most prized item. He picked up a small piece of decomposing wood, no bigger than an egg, and lifted it up towards the sky in a show of unabashed salesmanship. Is that part of the true cross? Said Clement, a man who knew a rotting relic when he saw one. Oh, it's even better than that, my wise man. This is part of the very cross that the good thief suffered on next to our Lord. Now tell me, how many times have you been offered part of that, eh? Houses up and down this street can offer you a piece of the true cross, and unless our Lord was hoisted onto a cross the size of the papal palace, it can be safely assumed that they are not all legitimate. How many times have you been offered a piece of the cross next to Jesus, though, eh? This is a genuine relic, one that has been seen by our Lord himself, and I'm giving it to you for nothing. Nothing. Well, that is very tempting, said the Pope with genuine intrigue. Unfortunately, I have come out without my purse. I've come out without my purse. Can we agree on this sale, and I shall return to you another time to complete the exchange? The shopkeeper had given his best performance for some time, and all he received in return was an answer he had heard dozens of times before. He could feel a barbed response rising from his chest, battling with his inner salesman for control over the end of the conversation. You're as bad as the Pope, feigning interest in people just to toy with him like a marionettist. I look forward to never seeing you again, good sir, said the shopkeeper, despite himself. But may the venom of his holiness pass over your head to your enemy nonetheless, he added, just in case. Clement was pulled in every emotional direction. He had never experienced such a personal attack since his ascension to the papal seat. Yet a response in his usual all-powerful manner was out of the question if he was to remain anonymous. It would be unproductive. He could not allow such a perception of himself to go unchecked, however. Dear lowly shopkeeper, he began, stepping on his words carefully like a child walking on a wet floor. I do not feign anything, including threats to those who slight my sincerity. Let me be as clear as I can to avoid any unintentional misunderstandings. Clement had thundered back into a familiar demeanour. He raised himself to his full height, towering above the shopkeeper and casting his ample shadow over the now cowering man. He was an expert at looming ominously over people, and enjoyed it almost as much as the casting of judgment itself. The Pope wasn't the only man who could intimidate people in this city, he reasoned. He could be enjoyably menacing without necessarily being the Pope. That was sufficient to convince himself it was safe enough to open the floodgates. I will have these trinkets with or without payment. For your part, you will be glad of this day, for in time it will become your means of life. People of weak substance will come to you for guidance and comfort as the man who met me on this day. Let it be enough for me to say that, as it stands, it may also be your means of death. I would choose your next words carefully, my kind, lowly shopkeeper. I'll give you 1 cross to bagger off, you lunatic, said the shopkeeper. Here. But I'll take it, thank you, said Pope Clement, enjoying this shopping experience much more than he was a few minutes earlier. And a good day to you too, kindly shopkeeper. So that's the first one.
Much clearer than last time, and hilarious.
Thank you. I should have said that he was in disguise actually at the start, but anyway, not to worry.
Yeah, I particularly like
The phrase enjoyably menacing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was good. Okay, so now this is going to be a total shift now because we're going to go from 14th century Avignon to science fiction. So, are we ready for the next one? Yep.
We're good to go.
Good to go. Okay, so this is the opening scene to Zoomers, out now. Peacock Lane Apartments, Southend, England. Well, that's a problem now, isn't it? Said Clobber. People are too cautious these days. Ah, with good reason, said Scratch, trying the handle of another door. Can't be too careful with so many unscrupulous people prowling the streets. What, like us, you mean? Oh, good God, no. There's more refinement about us, isn't there? It's all well and good for your common criminal to borrow from a stranger indiscriminately, but we factor in a bit of diluted morality, don't we? Puts us above your common criminal, see? No, all we're doing is testing the security features of these well-stocked domiciles. Plus, we're not on the streets. We're indoor removal specialists. Well, I suppose you're right, said Clobber. Maybe this job will be our ticket out of here. Imagine, Scratch, a life with real meaning. There'd be no more taken from the rich to line our pockets. I'd rather not if it's all the same to you. I'm on a crusade, brother. I won't rest until the last pearl has been emancipated from the purely secured walnut-lined cabinets of the wealthy. Well, it's very altruistic of you. What if you complete this grand crusade, though? Where will your motivation come from? A bottle, I'd imagine. Scratch's arm gave way slightly as the handle turned. Jackpot. The two morally inclined thieves peered into the apartment. Expensively dull paintings lined the walls in a haphazard pattern, and unpolished brass ornaments cluttered every elevated ledge. Specks of dust swirled in a sunbeam above an oversized table. Perfect, muttered Scratch, pulling his tweed flat cap down tightly and rubbing his gloved hands together. Now, drawers or cabinets? Cabinets this time, I think. I'll fancy a little porcelain jug for Mother. Right you are. I'll start in the bedroom. Scratch opened a dark wooden door and stepped into what would have been an entirely unremarkable room if it wasn't for the spiraling purple and black vortex in one corner and the shinily clad life form with short legs and inconveniently long arms standing 2 paces in front of him. Do you speak English? It asked. Said Scratch. I will assume for the moment that you do. This way, please, it said, pointing at the improbably localized maelstrom. Sorry, I'm struggling with your earth tongue. So many different languages in such a small space. I don't know how you survived this long. Say that again, managed Scratch. Oh, I see, began the alien, folding one of its arms towards the top of its head and scratching gently. See. It unfurled its arm. Did I do it right? Did you do it right? Did you? Sorry. I don't like to embarrass myself in front of new recruits. I've been like that since I was a young one. A young what? Circus performer? I understand your planet is yet to meet life forms from another world, said the alien. I'm afraid first contact is never quite as romantic as one expects. Practicality tends to win out over drama in the end. It's a shame, really. So, you're not from the lads on Rushmore Street? Rushmore Street was not in my briefing. Is it a special place for your kind? This place is like a pair of silk ferrets' knickers, called Clobber from the living room. Bloody expensive and totally pointless. Here, look, who uses a pocket watch these days? I reckon they're real diamonds on their hands too. What a bloody great big waste of money. He looked up from his newly acquired timepiece as he entered the bedroom, dropped it onto the floor as he saw the alien, and followed it to the ground with a dull thud. That's Clobber, said Scratch. He's usually more polite. It's time to go, said the alien with a quiet chuckle. Time, see? Go? I'm not going anywhere. We've only just got in. Look at the place. I reckon they've got gold-plated gold in here. You're half right, said the alien. We're not just going somewhere. We're going somewhere too. Oh, and the name's Pedinert, but you can call me Terry. The list of questions in Scratch's mind had positioned themselves into something approaching the correct order of priority when a thick silence sucked all perspective from the room. They began to slide towards the purple vortex, as it, in turn, slid towards them. What about Clobber? Thought Scratch, despite trying to say it out loud. He wasn't selected, thought Terry. Selected? Thought Scratch. What for? All in good time, human. All in good time. Terry let out a mirthless laugh as they closed in on the vortex. Was that any good? He thought to Scratch. I've been practicing, but Mother says I need to build up to it a bit more. Before Scratch could think of an answer, they were at the vortex. The two figures stretched into it like an over-cheesed pizza slice and twanged with unimaginable speed into its center. Clobber lifted his head from the carpet. Scratch, where are you? Don't be playing silly buggers with me now, Scratch. Arcadia, Promontory Nebula. Great Gamadrons! Roared General Buck, slamming a tentacle onto the reinforced cobalt desk. How hard can it be to transport a single human through time and space? It's not as if we're zooming a damn moon, people. The landing zone wasn't even moving. I believe it's on account of his planet's containment field, General, said his assistant, Pants. It's never been breached before. I'll breach you if he isn't standing in my office in 2 minutes. Yes, sir, said Pants, scurrying off to tap furiously on the command board. And bring tea. Some of those green biscuits with a chewy center, too. The general strode into his office and slammed the wall to his right. Two clear panes of reinforced diamonds slid towards each other and gave a satisfying click as they sealed the room. He took his seat behind his oversized desk and steepled two thin tentacles. He used another to wipe the viscous goo that oozed from the top of his shiny head whenever he felt under pressure. 250 years to prepare, and nobody thought about a containment field, he muttered to himself. 250 bloody years. A striped ball at the corner of his desk spun gently. Buck looked up at the doors, now opaque, and clicked his tongue. They opened, and a disheveled-looking human was escorted to a seat in front of the general. Ah, they found you. Good. Welcome to Arcadia. I imagine you have some questions. Let's start with, where am I? Said Scratch. Oh, how quaint of you, said Buck. Where is too simple a question. You are both somewhere and somewhen. Listen, I've been in plenty of police stations in my time, all for unfounded accusations, I might add. So don't start on the whole, this is the beginning of the rest of your life lecture. I've heard them all, mate. A complicated smile grew on Buck's face. Did any of these police officers have tentacles? Oh, come off it. I've seen better fancy dress costumes on school kids. Your moustache is clearly stuck on with sellotape. It bloody well isn't. I'll have you know it's took many years of careful cultivation. It isn't easy for an Arcadian to grow one, you know. Not that you'd understand. I understand it's a cheap knockoff. One of the lads down Priory Lane dressed up as a half-man, half-octopus once for Big Dave's homecoming. Took ages to get the sticky part to stay on his lip. Ah, but could he do this? Asked Buck. He lifted a square casing on his desk and pressed a bright yellow button. A vortex appeared beside Scratch, sucked him in, and spat him back out again a moment later. You took your time, cried Scratch. I could have been killed. I believe your people called it the war to end all wars. How long were you there, would you say? Asked Buck. Long enough. How long? 2 days, maybe 3. It's hard to keep count when you're in an enemy bunker and you can't speak the language. You were gone for a mere moment, dear boy. I bloody wasn't. In any case, said Buck, I believe I have proved my point well enough. Care for a biscuit? Anyone could do that, said Scratch, ignoring the offer. All you need is a few mirrors and a secret doorway. Buck sighed. Are all humans like this? I'll do one more, but then that's your lot. He lifted the casing again, twisted the yellow button, and pressed it. The opaque diamond doors opened, and Scratch walked in. Ah, they found you. Good. Welcome to Arcadia. I imagine you have some questions. All right, I'll give you that one, but that doesn't explain the week in the Somme. Yes, it does, said Buck incredulously. And it wasn't a week. It was 6 hours at most. It felt like a bloody week. Buck steepled his tentacles again. Since you seem reluctant to offer questions, I will answer some for you. You have arrived on Arcadia in the Promontory Nebula. You have been selected for a mission of critical importance. Who to? Interrupted Scratch. What do you mean, who to? I mean, said Scratch in a patronizing tone, to whom is the mission of critical importance? That's your question? Not, what the bloody hell do you mean I'm on a different planet? Or why is this extraterrestrial life form sending me through time and space with a waft of a tentacle? Well, a man has to have priorities, doesn't he? Doesn't matter where I am. Or when. All that matters is I'll make it to the end of the day with the same number of arms, no offense, and preferably a few more jingly bracelets. Allow me to enlighten you, Mr. Scratch. You have not made it to the end of this day. Not yet, anyway. It's a good deal more poetic than that. We are coming to the end of days, you might say. the finish line, the last hurrah. Oh, well, that explains why you brought me here then. Buck gave Scratch a look of intense curiosity. Do you know what's going on here? Not really, but what does that matter? What does it matter? You've just been zoomed to another planet at another time, and it's the end of the bloody world. Why aren't you rolling around the floor in torturous mental agony? Well, the way I see it, said Scratch, rubbing the flat of his hand up and down his stubble, is that if this is the end of the world, then it depends on which world is ending. If it's the one I've just left, then I'm better off here. And if it's this world that's ending, then you wouldn't bring me in the first place. Plus, if you can bounce around time willy-nilly, then all you need to do is go back a few years and all's well with the world again. Stands to reason, doesn't it? Well, you could at least seem a little put out. What's the use in that? I don't worry about nothing, see, on account of it being a waste of time and energy. Now, if the police were chasing me from a recent place of work, that's a different story altogether. You need your wits about you then. But they're not chasing me, are they? Wait, they're not, right? The police are not chasing you, no. Destiny is, though. Oh, don't give me that. There ain't no such thing as destiny. You make your own luck in this world. In your world, perhaps, but not here. Speaking of which, said Scratch, are you all like that? Like what? You know, all tentacles and slime, no offence. Only it's a little disconcerting on account of me never having met anyone with more than 4 limbs. Would you prefer us to look more like you? It can be arranged. You can do that, can you? I've just sent you back in time to the Great War, have I not? A spot of morphing is no trouble. Go on then, said Scratch. It'll prove it isn't a cheap fancy dress costume at the same time. Buck pondered for a moment, then tensed. He wobbled a little, then transformed into a humanoid shape. This was accompanied by a sound not entirely unlike a finger popping in a cheek. There, how's that? Much better. The professor was wise to choose you, Mr. Scratch. I'm sure you'll prove to be a valuable member of the team. Report to the training rooms at once. Your teacher is waiting. That's the intro to Zoomers.
Oh, right as you finished, I had a sneeze. Give me just 1 second and
I'll fill. It's okay.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, no. I was like, oh man, like I mean, as you're about finishing,
to sneeze,
I'm like,
he's gonna finish.
The timing. Whoa. Oh man. Okay. So yes, we do have a few questions here. Okay. That's just a fancy costume. Like,
there's a terrible Cockney accent as well, but anyway, that's.
I mean, are there good ones though? Like,
well, yeah, no comment. I thought the general book sounded an awful lot like Pope Clement VI. I found as well, but anyway, there you go. Who knew?
I actually don't know what the Pope sounds like. I
guess.
French.
He was French, so he certainly didn't sound like Stephen Fry, which is how I did him. But anyway.
I mean, he's French, but he's speaking Italian. So, I mean, does that mean he has a French accent on his Italian? And if so, what does that even sound like? What?
Yeah, but not then, because in the papal seat was in Avignon. So not to get nerdy or anything, but the papal seat was in Avignon. So it was in France at the time. Where that was set. That makes it sound like it's a real historical book, and there's real facts in here, you know.
Real facts, but, true facts.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. He really did go shopping on his own.
Oh. Let's see. Okay, so going back here. Okay, here we go. In developing your ideas for a book, do you begin with an absurd situation such as being Genghis Khan's HR director, or a specific funny scene such as the Pope going shopping?
Definitely the former. So the very, very first bit of an idea I had for Killing Chance was give Genghis Khan a HR manager. I just thought that I've just found that hilarious that the Mongol horde would have a man with a clipboard going, excuse me, what do you do? Like it was just too funny. So then I look at, okay, let's flip a few other bits if I can. So Genghis Khan had loads of kids, whatever. So let's give him none, you know, and then just add a load of silly names, put a bit of a story to it, and off you go.
Yes. Yeah. Also simple. I think comedy is probably one of the more difficult things to write. Really, you know.
So I mean, yes, you're absolutely right. It's tremendously difficult. I couldn't.
Was that
write
comedy?
See, I'm just to back up my own point now how easy it is. But if I had to do, if I was doing like, I love reading fantasy, but if I had to write a fantasy book, like, you'd have to do like outlines and, you know, religions, and you'd have to make up you'd have to make up something that would stand up to scrutiny. Whereas with comedy, it doesn't matter if it's not true, because, you know, no one's going to read Killing Chance and go, well, actually, I think you'll find Genghis Khan did have lots of children, so that's nonsense. I'm not reading that one. You know, because it's a comedy. It's supposed to be absurd. It's supposed to be silly. So it doesn't matter if it's technically right or wrong. So you can just make it up, and that kind of suits my writing style, because as I said earlier, I tend to just lay the tracks as I go, so I don't know what's going on myself when I'm writing it.
Well, so how do you, if that is the case, how do you keep straight? So at the beginning of the show, you were saying that the first book is about cheating death. Cheating Death is about 4 different people that converge in this plot, and so if you don't really do the world outline, then how do you keep those timelines straight so that when they converge, all the things are making sense?
Yeah, that's good. It's a good question. And basically what I did is I kind of wrote 4 different stories. So I wrote the Niccolo, the Sicilian con man, going up to Genoa and Avignon, and I did Cuthbert and Robert coming down from England, and I did Hildegard coming from Germany, and I had the Pope in there. So depending on what mood I was in, I would write, you know, a bit for whichever character I fancied, and then I just then look at, okay, well, they all arrive on that day, so she would have spent whatever, a month traveling to get there, so a month back is there, so I'll drop her first chapter in there. Do you know? And you just kind of, you can just place it afterwards, you know.
Yes, that makes
whereas
sense.
A lot of people would do it the other way, and fair play to them, that's what suits some people. But I couldn't. God, I couldn't map out an outline and then be right. Okay, so I have to do this scene. I just couldn't do it. I'd have to just, like, Cheating Death is probably the most complex of the books, because there are 4 strands that, as one review said, wind masterfully together. But I don't necessarily agree. But they do collide anyway. You know, so whether they're wound masterfully, I'm not sure, but they collide in the middle anyway.
If an alien pops out that's got tentacles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, so this one, I kind of have a supplemental question to go to as well. So do you find that it gets funnier in editing, or does most of the humor appear right away?
It's a great question. For my style, it's funny right away. So I tend to, there's fairly minimal editing to mine, because I tend to self-edit as I go. So compared to other ways to write a book, it's relatively linear. So when I get to write the end of the first draft, it's 95% done, and I just go back and tweak. Whereas I know different people have different styles. Where,
well, geez, good for you, because that's good for you, because that's often one of the things that causes authors to not even finish, because they get stuck in editing.
Absolutely, yeah. I never do, to be honest. And the thing is, with the kind of the style of comedy that I do is a lot of dialogue. As you heard from the scratch and general book, it's just dialogue, and it's characters bouncing off each other. So if I thought, well, actually, I could do a funnier line than that, and I could put this instead of that, that it changes the whole course of the conversation. So I can't really go back and change it in that way. I kind of have to do it first time, because I kind of make it up as I go along. That's what steers the conversation. The dialogue steers the story and the conversation around. So if I change one thing back here, it's the butterfly effect, you know, or the ripple effect, whichever effect it is, and suddenly then loads of things don't make sense down there. So I tend to do it almost in one run. Now I might go back and tweak the odd word here and there to make it funnier. Like when you're in the pub and you realize 20 minutes later you had a really funny comeback for something someone said. You're like, damn, 20 minutes too late. But I go back and just tweak little bits, but I wouldn't. Basically, the bulk of the humor is already there, really.
Yeah. You were just saying that, and suddenly my brain went off into like the bit about when you have a funny comeback 20 minutes later, and I was like, man, wouldn't that be hilarious to have a character whose form of Tourette's syndrome was to actually blurt out whatever was the funny comeback, but like like later in the book. So like the scene goes on, and then just randomly, suddenly they're like, blah, like completely out of the context. I don't know. Anyway, that was where my brain went there for a second. But related to this question on the screen, do you find that it gets funnier in editing? So do you ever find that in rereading your work, to get all the things right, do you ever find that the funny goes away because you've reread it? And now, because you already know what the humor was, you've already like read it once, you're reading it again, maybe to review it. Do you find that you're like, actually, I don't know if that is as funny as I thought it was, or, you know what, does that make sense? What I'm asking?
Definitely. And it certainly did with Making Man. That's for sure. Like I'd go back and, there's a little sequence where they're about to go into a mountain, like into the heart of a mountain. And basically the narration says, if the black that was coming up from the heart of this mountain would feel hard done by being called black, and it should have had another color named after it because it was so bloody black. Do you know? And when I wrote it, I thought that's funny. Whatever, I wrote it in, and the more, and it's still in the book, but the more I read it, the more I just read it as a sentence. Oh yeah, this is the bit about him talking about black. Yeah, right. And so it does kind of lose its patina, or sorry, gets a patina, loses its sheen a little bit. But not really with. It's funny actually. It does actually vary from book to book. Because not really with Cheating Death, because that's more situational than kind of gags and one-liners. So it's the situation of the Pope going shopping rather than. I mean, there are obviously jokes in there and stuff, but a lot of it is situation. The
whole scene is
and so it's easier to see the humor again. When I'm going over it again, but yeah, if I get to the others. I suppose it also depends. I mean, you could watch episodes of your favorite sitcom over and over again. And it's still just as funny. So I suppose it depends how good the humor is as well.
Here's, I don't know what this is in reference to, but maybe
that already sounds like it's somebody I know who's put some private joke up there. But
I don't think so. I think it might be a reference somehow to Stephen Fry, but it makes me wonder if you could take off with a challenge absurd situation. Does that make sense to you?
Or is that a typo? But I'm up for it.
Wasn't Stephen Fry a long time ago on like a panel show in the
QI.
UK?
Yeah, QI. Oh, I wonder if that's
what they're. I don't know.
But yes, I could. I'll say yes for that one. Yeah.
Whatever it is, you're in.
Please let us know what that is. I want to know what that is now. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, so I have a question, which was: is the alien named for Terry Pratchett?
Yes, he is. Yes, and the Paternic version of his name begins with a P because of P.
Yeah, Terry. Yes,
it is. Yeah, and it's kind of. I actually and ahed about that because I thought, is that just too in your face that God, this guy likes Terry Pratchett, But I thought, no, sod it, I'll keep it in. So
I actually think it's kind of funny, especially because I mean, I feel like the authors kind of go together, Douglas Adams and Terry Pratchett, like they're sort of in the same category. And I guess that knowing that makes the fact that the alien is named Terry funny in my mind, because it's almost like the alien was trying to find something and it was like, this seems like the name that fits.
Yeah.
So I thought that was funny.
It's funny. Anytime it came to being, if there was like a number on a door or something, it was so hard to not put 42 down.
Oh,
I didn't. I don't think I did in the end in any of them. I don't think, but yeah, it is Terry. Yeah, but I like to put there are little Easter eggs in all the books really. So some of them are for just people who know me would know the Easter eggs, and some of them are for like if there is a scholar of Genghis Khan reading Killing Chance, they will think they know who the heir is, and I won't say whether they're right or wrong. But anyway, I'll leave it at that in case there's any Genghis Khan aficionados here.
I'm just trying to imagine people that are uptight about their history reading things like this.
Oh my God. No, yeah, they shouldn't read Killing Chance. They could probably read Cheating Death and maybe get around. Yeah, Cheating Death is relatively kind of historically accurate, except for the the storylines and stuff obviously are nonsense.
Right.
But yeah, killing chances, holy moly, yeah, don't like the Emperor's servant is called Bao Lo, and I don't think that was the name of the ancient Jin Emperor's assistant, but yeah. There you go. You're like that person who gets, has a great comeback 20 minutes later. It's like you got the joke 20 minutes later.
Yeah, I am sometimes like on delayed because my brain is always doing a million things in here, and so it's like people will say things, and it's like it's like in the queue. And then as it gets processed through, I'm like, oh, that was hilarity, right?
Yeah.
So we do have a clarification on that thing. Before I clarify it, though, I do want to tell everybody, if you want to be entered onto the Wheel of Wind to get a free copy of one of John's books, put your name in the comments now. Now is the time. Put your name in, because when we're done with this last bit, I am going to spin that wheel and I'll get your names on them. So now the clarification was, it says that here it is. It says it means that if they came up with an absurd situation, could you go off into a full story with a little anecdote here about how Harlan Ellison used to live write short sci-fi stories with a short challenge, and this is like an absurd challenge, right? So
absolutely, I would love. That's pretty much how I write. I pretty much think, I know, I'll write about a Neanderthal engineer. Like that's pretty much how I do it, So absolutely, yeah. Give me anything silly, and 100%. I would love to do that. Yeah.
I mean, I have to say, these were pretty good excerpts to hear for, I guess I just find the writing of comedy to be particularly difficult. Maybe that's because I don't consider myself a funny person.
Maybe. No, my friends don't consider me funny, so I wouldn't worry.
How is that even possible?
Thank you. I'm taking that as a compliment. Thank you.
I mean, it just makes me like, I can imagine you at conventions where you're giving a panel and you're just deadpan and you never smile and you never laugh and you talk about the comedy that you write, right? Like there you right, like just totally serious all the time.
I hate
just make it funnier.
I hate being serious. I just like life's too short to be serious. Have the crack.
Yes. No, that is true. That is true.
Although, these two, I can't see if you can see that because now I'm blocking my view of the screen.
I see the 2020 Pareto Prize in blue and in red. Yeah. Oh, 2019.
2019,
okay.
Yeah. So these are one of the, I don't know if we can talk about the Patreon stuff now, but
go ahead.
Yeah, so one of the Patreon prizes is, I think it's in this one actually. I had two short stories that were included as shortlisted for the Pareto Prize and included in their anthologies. And there's one called Home, which this is going to go against everything I've just said about how much that I like writing comedy. It's super serious, and it's a really depressing one about a homeless guy. So don't expect to have guffawing laughter when you're reading it. But anyway, it's a short story that's in there because I can't write more than 2,000 words of unfunny stuff before I think, I need a break. I need to go and write some gags, So, but anyway, that's the prize for the Patreon, along with some alternative cover art.
Nice. So yeah, you're giving us quite a lot for the Patreon, so that's very exciting. All right, you guys, I think I have all of the names, and here's our Wheel of Win. Like, you guys have like 2 seconds before I go over here. I'm just sort of, well, because there's always a little bit of a time lag, so I don't like to, but I think that I am not seeing anything else, so I will go ahead, submit yon list, and I know, right? Woo!
Orange is my favorite color. I like someone in orange. Who is it?
Red Falcon. Congratulations, you are the winner of today's book. So you will get to get your choice. And what are the 4 books I think that they have to choose from?
4 books. So Making Man, Cheating Death, Killing Chance, and Zoomers.
All right. We will hook you guys up after the show in an email together and let you all sort it out amongst yourselves. So before we let you go today, we're like right on the dot. Boop.
Nailed it.
Yes. Is there anything that you would like to say? And it was perfect too, by the way, except for my one hiccup. Your,
Yeah,
your
I was
perfect.
when I say I mean my internet connection was flawless.
Yes, it was.
Delighted.
What is there anything else that you would like to say before we let you go?
Go and buy my books. That's what I'd like to say. But follow me on Twitter. I'm at John Drake Writer. Follow me on Facebook. It's author John Drake, just to mix it up. And if you go searching for my books and you see some pirate swashbuckling adventures, they're not mine. That's a different John Drake. So don't buy those. Don't
buy the pirate swashbuckling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, unless maybe I should write a pirate comedy just to really mess with the heads of fans of the other John Drake who go to buy pirate stuff. It's a lot funnier than usual. It's changed the style completely.
Talk about a way to hijack somebody else's marketing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think I might do the next book under Stephen King or something.
Right there you go.
Yeah, Terry Pratchett. That's what I should have done. Perry Tatchett. That could be
Perry Tatchett.
That could be my next pen name.
Oh man, I can just imagine like brainstorming sessions would be so hilarious. So if you guys do buy books, please remember to give the review to the authors, hit the like and subscribe button for us, and if you want to be automatically entered into every single drawing that we do here, both on Fae News and here on Author Reads, you can join our YouTube channel, join our Patreon channel, and or all the things together, including leaving your name and or the magic word in comments, depending on which show we're talking about. So thank you all for tuning in this Friday, and we have a pretty busy weekend ahead of us over here. So I guess I will see you all next Wednesday for Fae News, and I hope everybody's weekend is off to an awesome start. Bye-bye, everybody.
Have a good one. Bye.
Hello, friends. This is Gunther Hammerhands. Thank you for checking out Fairy Princess Lolly's channel. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like and subscribe button. Use your troll hammer to ring that little bell icon to get notifications when she posts future videos. And if you'd like to support these magical creations, fly over to our Patreon and join the Fairy family. Safe travel!